let us clear around that. Do we or do we not need the Francophones?
Let us take the Second French Revolution away for a while and just look at our situation as Southern Cameroonians and the Francophones in Cameroon. Now, we are looking at approximately 80% to 20% of our population. So it's, 4 to 1. Mm-hmm. Every revolution, every struggle in which you are the minority, in which you are numerically on the disadvantage, requires that you go beyond just your struggle. You need to buy into the conscience, into the well-being, the good thought, the good sense of the opponent, and get them to start seeing things from your perspective. Yeah. Now, let me give the example of the civil rights struggle in the US. African Americans were the minority. They struggled for a long time, coming from slavery, slave trade, slavery, through to the fights for civil liberties. What got them to win was not just the strength of the African American. It was the strength of the African American and the fact that the African American was able to get into the head of the white American and get them to understand that what was being done to African Americans was unfair. And as soon as you started to get more and more white people fighting on behalf of African Americans, then you started to see better results. Same with our case. Think back about 8 months ago when this thing started. Think back 2 years ago. Yeah. There was a clear-cut narrative that Southern Cameroon is part of the whole of Cameroon and one and indivisible. Yeah. When this thing broke out 8 months ago, it was the same thing. Oh, we are one and indivisible. Yeah. Think about the narrative 6 months, 8 months down the line. It's beginning to say, oh, no, we understand your problem. We can actually talk about federalism. There is a way we can work this thing out. Why? Because we have gotten into their heads. We have educated them. And they now begin to realize that, no, actually, all along we've been taught the wrong education. Now, push this thing a bit more and get them to realize that, in fact, we are all victims of a system. We all suffer economically. We are all under the yoke of France. And once you start to build this narrative that gets them to understand, you begin to build more allies. Why do you want to create enemies when you can have more friends? And the more friends you have, the easier it is for you to attain what you want. So do we need Francophones? There is no doubt about that. Anybody who tells you anything to the contrary is lying. Or is probably telling you that out of ignorance. Let me give it to you. Because of our struggle and the influence we've been able to exert in Burkina Faso, Francophone Cameroon elite activists, nationalists decided to hold their own conference and to have a discussion around the crisis in Cameroon. Yeah. Why? They wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for us. No. And once they begin to organize such conferences, not in the country, outside of the country, it tells you that we are having an impact. What I do personally, every now and then, if I have some time, I go to some Francophone Jangi or to some meeting of Francophones and I educate them. And by the time I leave from there, I have 1 or 2 of them who are beginning to discuss in a different manner. They tell a different story. And the more we get them to point, and remember that largely from the beginning of this crisis, their arsenal was pointed at us. What we should do, and we are doing, is that gradually their arsenal is beginning to turn and point towards the real enemy, that is the regime. So, do we need Francophones? Yes. They are numerically superior. They have got the resources in their favor. They've got a lot in their favor. We need to take those weapons and turn it against the enemy.
And that enemy is the government of La Republic.
It's the regime
not
in Yaoundé.
The people of La Republic.
No, we cannot target the people. We target the regime. The regime is our enemy. And once you do that, you start getting the people, everybody. Now, look at SCBC, the television. Yeah. Now, this is being watched in some of the most remote parts of Francophone Cameroon. What does that tell you? There is interest in what we are doing. Our television is educating them. The people are beginning to turn. They're beginning to ask questions that they never asked before. A good example, a friend of mine, very popular and respected politician, struggle activist, spent 2 years in jail, in Mr. Biya's jail, as a result of his activism and opposition to the regime, was one of the brains behind the ghost towns in the 90s. When this whole thing broke out, he's the one who called me and We had a long conversation, and when I spoke about the revolution, he said, oh, that's not a revolution, it's just a spring that will fizzle out with time. 2 months down the line, he called me and was like, Milan, you were right. Actually, this is a revolution. Now, what has happened? We have just educated one of the best minds in Francophone Cameroon. So, and somebody like him, and of course, after that conversation and a series of actions and conversations over time, he became one of the brains behind the organization of the conference in Burkina Faso. So that tells you how you can engage somebody and to make a complete U-turn and start fighting in your favor.
Wow.
So back to your question, do we need Francophones? Yes, Francophones. In fact, we need everybody that can be an ally, everybody. So let's not dismiss certain people simply because we spite them. It doesn't help us. Let's build our arsenal of friends and narrow down our enemies so that when we target them, we target narrow, easier, and we get our targets to the point where we win easily.
Wow. So Milan, I think you have convinced me. I've seen this angle, and let us be clear, this is not the only strategy that SCACOF is employing. SCACOF is employing so many other strategies, and this is just one part of that bit, and that part is to take care of the international issue. We want to gain sympathy from the international community. We want to gain sympathy from the Francophone community. We want the Francophone community to stand up against the French that are sucking them dry, that is causing the suffering in the French community. So that is very clear for me, sir. The passion, Milan, that you have put about this around the French, around studying the French hegemony in Africa, now tells me something. And I want to clear with you, does it mean, sir, that you want to lead, that this part is what you're interested to lead in this struggle as your own contribution? Is this the front that you want to lead in this thing? I need to be clear on that.
Yeah. Let me start, first of all, for answering this question by saying, like we have said before and we continue to say, no option is off the table. And when we met, this number of times that meetings have taken place, there has been a clear understanding that no option will be taken off the table. All options are open, and we will employ these options simultaneously if necessary and when needed. Yeah. One of the weaknesses of the struggle way back 20, 30 years ago was that it had a focus solely on the legal. What we have done over this short period of time is introduce other facets. That includes the diplomatic. Oh, and of course there was the diplomatic, but it was weak. I think what we are trying to do now is to strengthen the diplomatic arm. What is taking place today in terms of community mobilization, the people of Southern Cameroon standing up as one person and defying the authority of the Yaoundé regime is in itself another facet. Then, of course, you have the facet of self-defense, which everybody is clamoring for. And we all think that by law, legally, by the laws, natural laws, by international human rights law, by all the laws that apply, when you are attacked as a person, your first instinct is to find a way to defend yourself. And therefore, as a people, we have got the right, we've got the responsibility to defend ourselves. That needs to be understood. What we shouldn't tolerate, and this is important, what we must not tolerate is certain individuals who go around and say, oh, this particular angle is useless. We must only carry out this angle. There is no struggle. Tell any such individual that says that he should give you the example of one single struggle that was carried out. And struggle, be it the struggle for human rights, struggle for independence, struggle for, like the one of the Americans against apartheid, all of them. Tell them to give you one single struggle revolution which focused solely on one approach that succeeded. None. None. So anybody tells you that they are lying or they are ignorant. You have to have a multiplicity of facets, the diplomatic, because at the end of the day, when you go through your conflict, you will have to sit down on the table and discuss these issues as to where you want to go. At the end of the Second World War, the Germans lost. For the world to move ahead, it was important to sit around the table and agree with the Germans that you've lost. Therefore, you are going to lose all your territories. I mean, First World War, same thing. You are going to lose this rights. So it doesn't matter what route you take. At some point, you will have to sit down and talk. And for that reason, we need to start building and strengthening our diplomatic arm. Anybody that says you don't need a diplomatic arm is ignorant or is not telling the truth. Anybody who says you don't need the legal arm is ignorant, because at the end of the day, we live, in fact, it's become even more sophisticated today. Before, you could carry out a liberation or a freedom movement, freedom action, and that would be seen as an action against a tyranny, against colonialism. Today, governments have recoined this whole thing to denote and connote terrorism. So whatever you're doing, you need to look at how does this fall within the ambits of international human rights and humanitarian law? Yeah. Because if you go outside of this perimeter that has been set internationally, then it becomes easy to be branded a terrorist. So it becomes important also that our legal minds are part and parcel of this. So the legal continues to be relevant. And anybody who tells you that we don't need any kind of recourse to the legal action is not telling the truth. Now, same with self-defense. Self-defense, like I said, comes naturally, but I don't believe that self-defense is something that you go announce on television. Self-defense is something you do. You defend yourself. And so what we need to be doing at this stage is to work towards defending ourselves. And that is something that Skakov is working day and night around. It just does not help Skakov to go on national television, to go on Facebook, and announce its strategies and its tactics. I have never seen it before. Okay. No serious freedom fighter goes on the social media platform and announces their strategies and their tactics. It's never happened before. Anybody who does that, and of course, let me be clear. Everybody has got a role to play in this revolution, in our struggle. Everybody. Yeah. Some are good for the outlay, something. When you for the decoration, by talking about it is good. Yeah. What that does is that it continues to creates the awareness that is necessary for self-defense. Yeah. It creates the awareness in our people that the leaders are not sleeping; they're thinking about it. Yeah. There are others who do it for fun. Mm-hmm. Let them do it. I think what that does is that it helps to draw attention to the issues, but the real action is one that is not spoken. And perhaps the only message that goes with that is wait and see the action that will follow. Yeah. Now, back to the Second French Revolution.
Audio Jungle.